like to introduce an incredible gentleman that had the privilege of meeting just recently, and he's a member of one of our chapters, but smart enough to visit many of our chapters and take advantage of what WOAMTEC's all about. Please welcome to the set Andrew David joining us today. Andrew, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
My
I appreciate
pleasure.
the opportunity.
My pleasure. I have to share with them because we're going to meet the chapter director for the international director soon, next after the segment. And I met you at the Brazilian Portuguese International Chapter meeting. And, you know, here's this good-looking guy sitting at this meeting with a bunch of women. It takes a confident man to be in a room full of confident women. And he's sitting there with style and ease, and they're talking and talking. Tell him about your experience.
Well, like you said, it was a chapter, and there are Brazilians and other Latin women's in the international chapter down there. And I was there just sitting and listening and kind of paying attention to the conversations, but they weren't expecting me to pay attention as much because they were carrying on in Portuguese and Spanish. But I speak Portuguese. I'd spent 2 years in Rio de Janeiro as a missionary. Moved to Orlando 12 years ago and met a Brazilian woman, and now 11 years later we're together, so I speak Portuguese real well. And just sat there listening until they asked a question. I responded in Portuguese and kind of caught everyone off guard a little bit.
It was amazing. If you would have seen these women's face, the reaction of how blushed they were, because they did comment on how attractive you are, which again makes it so funny because it does take a confident man to be around a bunch of confident women, and you're very wise because you know that it's moms that have to make a lot of these proactive decisions with their house and with their home, and I just applaud you for being there. And I more brought up that story because I think the fact that you've done missionary work really shows that you are what WOAMTEC is all about. You know, I don't know if you realize, but WOAMTEC stands for Women on a Mission to Earn Commission. Whether you're a man or a woman, the to earn commission part is what's really important because it's really the greater commissions that are referenced in the Bible and doing one for others and paying it forward and giving back. So just the fact that you've done missionary work, I applaud you for that. And I'm glad that you're here today. But let's get back to other than speaking Portuguese and you know, being a dynamic person himself. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, my name's Andrew. I've worked in the cleaning and restoration industry, moved out here, like I said, about 12 years ago last month, and real quick got into that industry, into cleaning, as a way to just kind of pass the time for a little while until I figured out what I wanted to do. And here we are 11 years later, and I'm still doing it. But being in things like WOAMTEC and networking and marketing and building relationships and business building, that's my passion. That's what I really enjoy doing. This has kind of become a vehicle that allows me to do that and get out in the community and meet people. And so I went from cleaning all over the state of Florida. We got into the restoration business in 2004, 2003. Charlie, Jean, and Francis came along.
I remember the time very well.
Yeah, it hit Florida here, and we all kind of, I mean, it was 3 of them right in a row, back to back. And I came from Arizona, where there's nothing. And so the hurricanes hit, and you know, Charlie was our first one, and I'm sitting in my house with my wife and our firstborn, and he's a few months old, and we're, you know, on a mattress in the middle of the family room, and I'm hearing things bang off of my windows, wondering if my house is going to fall apart and what the heck we're going to be doing. And that was kind of my baptism by fire with restoration, and we did work all over the state for a long time. The speaking Spanish and Portuguese really helped. We had crews that were working everywhere, doing a lot of stuff, made contacts there, and then ended up working, got called up to work in Katrina. And Katrina hit on August 26th of that year, and I got a call from a friend who does catastrophe stuff, so he travels all over the Northern America and does work, and he called and said, hey, I want you to bring guys up and want you to work. We're going to be in Mississippi and Louisiana. There's going to be a lot of stuff here. And so we prayed, we made the decision to go, and I left when my second son was 2 days old.
Oh my goodness.
And so I left my wife with a 19-month-old and a 2-day-old, and I was gone for months. And I was up there living in a tent and showering in a trailer and working almost in a war zone, you know. I mean, and I say that with all due respect to, you know, the soldiers, but National Guard was bunked out right next to us in the parking lot, and we were up there for months and got a lot of experience doing that kind of thing. And so, you know, I've seen restoration and disaster and everything else and what needs to happen from a father and husband standpoint, what I need to do for my family, being in it firsthand and doing the work and seeing it not just for homes but on a large scale. And we did a lot of work with hospitals and school districts and up in Slidell, Louisiana, we did the whole, they gave us 44 schools, and they said we got 12 days, we need to get kids back in school. And
wow.
I had about 130 guys. We were running around, sleeping only a couple hours a day or every other day, and trying to get things back together. And then did a lot of that and got back, and just have kind of stayed in it, and built
living
up the
in
business
it,
here.
Experiencing it, because if you were somebody that is affected by a hurricane or a tornado or any type of natural disaster, or a house being caught on fire, living it, seeing it, working in that field, what kind of advice would you give to me as a mom to better prepare or to recuperate? Like, how do you kick back? How do you bounce back from something like that?
I think the first step with anything is, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of, whatever it is, fixing things afterwards. Pound of cure, thank you. You want to prepare yourself. You want to be as ready as you can. When Charlie hit, my wife and I, we had some food storage. We had some basic things, and we had, a gas grill, and we had some water, and we had a few things where we didn't have power. No one in Central Florida did, and people in places that experience those types of disasters don't. But as long as you still have your home and you're not in a situation like in Oklahoma where you can't go back home, but say you're there, and get some of the basics. Get some candles, get some flashlights, get yourself a propane grill, do some basic storage foods and things that you'll be able to eat, because you want to be able to take care of your family. If you were here during that time, you went to the store, you went to Publix or Albertsons or Walmart, you go in, everything's gone. Right. And I've got a good friend of mine who's a general manager at a Walmart, and it's crazy, and people get that mob mentality so quick. If you don't have it beforehand, you're not going to get it afterwards. And so you need to take a few of those steps and make sure you've got something there to begin with.
Absolutely. Take it seriously. Don't take the warnings lightly, because I know with Charlie, we were without power for 2 weeks. And that was miserable. But if we wouldn't have had enough propane, to cook on the grill, to empty out your freezer as quickly as you can,
right,
and get through it. It's bad enough that you're suffering with the air conditioning and all of that. But if you are able to stay in your house, having even a tarp, I know is something that we tried to get a tarp afterwards because of roof damage, and you can't. You can't wait until afterwards because it's gone.
Yeah, you do that a little bit before, and any little ideas, anything we may talk about today. FEMA on their website, ready.gov. The government's done more and more in the last few years to try and put some stuff out there, and there's lots of sources that you can find. And I'm not talking about doomsday prepper type stuff, but basic things that you can do for your family. Just get ready for something small. Have enough food for 3 or 4 days. Worst case scenario, have something there. Have the tarp. Have your insurance documents close by. But then again, people, a lot of people talk about put them in a bag and put them in your refrigerator. Well, people in Oklahoma don't have that anymore, so you have to have it in different places and know what to do and have those numbers ready and know how to react if something happens.
That's a good point. And last month's show, Tony Zufelt from the Home Inventory Services Company was here, and one of the things she suggested was sending your insurance copies of your insurance documentation or anything that would be important to a different state. Because if Oklahoma or Florida or wherever, New Orleans is hit and there's a problem, your local bank, you're not going to be able to get it out of the local bank safety deposit box. So thinking beyond that and being able to call a relative to ask for help, I think is important.
There's something anywhere in the United States, something can happen, and it doesn't have to be something that's a natural disaster that you have 5 minutes to prepare for, or 2 weeks in the case of some hurricanes. It could be the house fire. It could be something else that just happens to you and your family. Well, in that case, what are you going to do, and how are you prepared, and what's the next step? Put it on a flash drive. Keep it on you. Keep it in your car. Do something like that. It's so easy nowadays to do some of that. But like I said, a lot of that stuff's on ready.gov. Pull a lot of that off. Look through it and find out what works best for you and your family, so you're ready in case something happens. So you're not the one going crazy, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? The only thing left is, the jar of pig's feet and some pork rinds, and that's all you're going to be able to eat for the next week. Take a couple of steps so that you're ready. And when it happens, be as safe as you can. A lot of times they put out the warnings to evacuate, and people don't. They never do. That's what they told the people in Louisiana when Katrina was coming: get out, get out, get out. And no one does. And then they always say it's the government's fault because they didn't give them. People know, and they tell you if you're not going to leave, then have a plan and figure out what's going to happen. And if you are, find the best way to get out and know where you're going. Like you said, if it's another state, if it's a family member, wherever, have that plan in place for your family.
Absolutely, beforehand. Now, one of the things that you did talk to me about too was that that when something does happen, you know, I know that we had a friend that when all the roofing damage happened, he was like everywhere. You know, he was in New Orleans like that and made all kinds of money because he was in the roofing industry. But there's a lot of people that may not be as qualified that may see an opportunity and jump in, and there's a lot of desperate people that may see an opportunity or a better price. And even now, from all the hurricanes here, you know, you're starting to see the roof damage. Like if this is a busy hurricane season, you know, all those roofs that were repaired 6 years ago or however many years ago poorly may end up having problems today.
And that's what we see all the time now as a restoration company. We do a lot of work where we're fixing things that were fixed or were redone 6 years ago, you know, after the hurricanes, because what happens is the industry nationwide is starting to pick up again. And what happens is all these people that are general laborers, a storm hits and they see the opportunity. I'm going to start up my own business, or I'm going to put my buddy in a truck and we're going to run around and we're going to offer our services. And like you said, people get desperate. They don't want to pay more.
Or wait for the good people.
Right. Or they don't want to wait because the good people have left. They're somewhere else. Like they've run off to somewhere to go after a bigger fish, or they're just so swamped. Because if a natural disaster hits in your area, well, then everybody that does construction or restoration or anything along those lines is going to be busy. So the other guys are going to come out of the woodworks. And you have to be careful when you're dealing with that. You have to vet who's going to be working in your home, because it is your home, bottom line, and you're going to be responsible in some way for what's happening. You got to make sure the guys are qualified, that they're licensed, they're insured, they know what they're doing, they've been in business for a long time, and they've got some experience. Don't hesitate to ask for references. Don't always look for the cheapest price, because it's a good chance it'll come back and bite you, you know, in the butt afterwards. And that's what'll happen. So when the storms are getting ready to come, you know, take a look around and find out who's in business now. And if someone isn't in business now, odds are in 2 months when a storm hits, they're not the guys you want doing the work for you when it does happen.
You know, that has a great suggestion. Like do the research now, so you're not trying to get access to the internet and do the research later, because that's really important. And if they don't have a website, that's definitely a red flag.
Right.
You know, I would consider it. Now, you don't just work with, you do mold damage, you do a lot of water damage, mold damage.
Yep.
What are the other kind of services that you do?
We do a lot of water damage. You know, if there's a pipe break, if there's a leak or something, we'll go out, we'll dry it down and help get you respond and return back to where you should be. We do the mold damage, we'll do the tear out and remediation, and then the repair, so that it's as if it was never there. We do a lot of work with investors and making sure that the homes are remodeled and done the way they should be. Our company's kind of a unique mix of individuals. We've got guys that have been in construction for 25, 30 years. We've got others that have been in restoration, and like myself for 10, 12, 15 years, and we've come together and created this company that the whole reason we're together is because we saw in the industry people that were unethical and doing practices that just weren't right. You know, after Charlie, Jean, and Francis, everything that happened, and seeing the way people were being really just extra money extracted where it didn't need to be.
Right.
You know, and that's rampant in the insurance industry, in restoration, in construction. Everyone's had a horror story with some general contractor that stiffed them or did poor, shoddy workmanship, and then they wouldn't stand behind their work. And so the guys at Recromax, we all came together to establish a company to do it right, and to do it right the first time, and stand by our work and make sure that it happens the way it should. And so, you know, all of our work, we're dealing with builders and insurance companies and property managers and others that want a go-to person that they can look to and say, hey, how do I polish this marble? Will you do this? Okay, well, while you're doing that, we've got this mold over here, and we've got this to happen, and we've got everyone there that has that experience. We don't have to, you know, look out for everybody else. That's
great. You know, I've often wondered if our house has mold. I'm allergic to mold, so you know, sometimes my allergies will flare up, and I often wonder why. Can you test? Like, is there a way to come in and test whether or not your property has mold? If it's not like an obvious water damage?
Right. Well, I haven't certified my nose yet, but oftentimes I can tell. Because I've kind of done the same thing. Being in so many environments, I've become real sensitive to it. So sometimes I can walk in. Now, granted, that's not going to hold up in any court of law. I can, well, Andrew said he was coughing when he came in. But you can get it tested. You can get an inspector to come in. You can get a hygienist to come in, and they'll take some air samples and check out the home. And outside of visually seeing it, that's really the only way to tell. And they'll tell you that it's this kind. And an inspector will tell you, yes, you have mold, and they may not tell you where the source is or what happened or how to get rid of it. They won't write up a scope of work. A hygienist will, and then that scope of work, it costs more, but if you're worried about it and you do have it and you have that scope of what you're doing is you're you're covering all your bases. And so the contractor can come in and say, okay, here's the scope that I need to follow. And you can say, here's the scope that you need to follow. And the hygienist says, here's what will happen. And if you do this, then all will be well. And everybody's covered. And it's that whole thing, you know, if you try and go the cheapest route and get it done the cheapest way, you're going to end up with problems in the long term, and it's going to cost you more in the long run.
And I would probably imagine that it wouldn't be wise if somebody came knocking at your door wanting to do this test for you and also fix the problem.
Yeah.
It would maybe not be a great decision. I mean, is that what you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. You want a third party to do it. It's the same thing. I had car troubles the other day. I had a tow company pick me up and recommend this great mechanic, and we went there, and turns out that the tow company and the mechanic have the same office. So obviously, you know, he's going to recommend them, and then they tried to charge me double what I'm actually getting the car fixed for. Same type of thing happens all the time in water damage and mold, and they say, yep, you've got it. Here's all the stuff we need to do, and they end up doubling and tripling the amount of work that needs to happen.
That is awesome.
So
You know,
sure.
I'm so thankful that you shared with us today, and I do think that it's something that is so important for people to just remember. You know, it's your job as a woman or a man or a husband or a wife, somebody to protect your home and to protect your business and to be proactive. You know, you never know when something's going to happen. You never know when the fire can start or the tornado can come through, and it's better to be safe than sorry. So again, our hearts go out to everybody in Oklahoma. Thank you for all the hard work you've done for all the people in Florida with all the hurricanes here and Katrina. That I applaud you for that. That is amazing.